The following program was made possible by financial support from the Arizona Heart Institute and Foundation. On February 25, 1995, many of Arizona's best-known dignitaries gathered at the Camelback Inn to honor their own. 5 of our state's most celebrated individuals were named 1995 Historymakers by the Historical League of the Arizona Historical Society. Unique Arizonans who have left an unforgettable mark on the pages of our state's history. Please join us for the Arizona Historymakers Gala 3.
Our history maker, Mr. Ben Avery, accompanied by his wife, Donda. Our history maker, Mr. Joe Beeler, accompanied by his wife, Sharon. Our history maker, Mr. Tom Chauncey. Our history maker, Dr. J. Lawrence Walkup, accompanied by his wife, Lucy. We are pleased to present Grady Gammage, Jr., this evening's Master of Ceremonies.
Good evening. Welcome to all of you this evening. It is my great pleasure to again be the Master of Ceremonies for this little bit of history. Now, I would be remiss this evening if I didn't remark that while there was a new City Hall opened, there was not a new museum in Papago Park opened. And as most of you know, this banquet has really had 3 functions it's tried to fulfill. One is to celebrate Arizona's statehood. One is to recognize the significant contributions of individuals to our state. And one is to raise money to get the museum in Papago Park opened. That still hasn't happened. It is no secret that there have been some difficulties in the fundraising process, and those of us close to it occasionally felt like maybe that museum was actually located in Bosnia and not in Papago Park. But I am pleased to announce to you this evening that those problems are behind the Arizona Historical Society. You will remember that what happened was the state put up $10 million to build the facility. The city of Tempe donated about $3.5 million worth of land. There has been, as the result of events like this and others, more than $1 million in private money raised for the museum. But we still need another 3. The House and Senate Appropriations Committees have approved funding the operational aspects of the museum for the next couple of years. And there is now in place an aggressive fundraising campaign to get the museum opened in time for the Super Bowl. It's the first time that's been announced publicly, and it's important. The museum will be fully open in 18 months and open by the time of the Super Bowl. I'd now like to invite to come up to the podium the governor of the state of Arizona, and I want you to know it's the same governor as the one we had the last time we did this banquet. Now, those of you who've been in Arizona a while know that is a fairly unusual event in recent history. So I would like to have Governor Fife Symington please come to the podium.
Thank you, Grady, and it's good to see you. You were surprisingly easy on me tonight, so I feel very relaxed. It's nice to see all of you here. Ann and I are very pleased to be here this evening. And Renee, thank you for your wonderful leadership. I'd like to make just a few very brief comments. First, I want to congratulate the League on its excellent work. It's great to see this kind of progress, and especially to hear the news about the museum, and the Super Bowl is a worthy goal. That's going to be a great date to open. I'm particularly pleased, though, to be here this evening. By the way, I'm not dressed in a black tie because I would have looked funny at this political event I went to if I was wearing a black tie. You know, the Man of the People Act really wouldn't have gone over too well if I'd been there in a black tie. But first, as I mentioned in January in my State of the State address, I don't believe that we're at the mercy of the waves and tides of history. I really believe that individuals make history, that our leaders take us in certain directions, either wisely or unwisely. And in this case, this state has really benefited from some wonderful leadership over the years, very humble leadership. And I think that is evinced in the honorees this evening, all of whom I wish to congratulate. They have really helped shape the destiny of this state and pointed us in the right direction. I also believe that this is part of the wonderful tradition in a state that individuals choosing very important goals and devoting their lives to achieving those goals, and that all sort of comes together and becomes the heritage of a state. And that's why I'm so proud of our state, because I think we have a unique and wonderful heritage, and one of the reasons why I'd like to see states like Arizona have a lot more power in the future over our lives and our collective directions. But I'm not going to get into a long-term, long political speech this evening because Grady's looking over my shoulder. But it is appropriate that we honor these 5 exceptional individuals this month because this month we are celebrating statehood, and that makes this extra special. And so I'm very proud and pleased to be here this evening to congratulate everyone, and particularly our honorees. And I also would like to have my wife Ann come forward because she would like to say a few words as well. Ann?
Good evening. I just wanted to add to Fife's words and also congratulate the Historical League for this event tonight. Renee tells me that you have raised tonight somewhere in the vicinity of $80,000, and that's no mean feat, so I congratulate you all for the work you've done. And we're also celebrating the 83rd year of statehood, and I think that's pretty wonderful also. We did some things earlier in the month. Many of you know about Polly Rosenbaum's essay contest. That's about Statehood Day, and that was a wonderful reminder of the youth that are coming to lead us in this great state. And tonight we're going to honor some people who have been leaders in various areas of participation in the state: education, conservation, art. It's wonderful. The law. All these things are important to a state's growth and direction. And so now it's Fife's and my great honor to present the honorees this evening with their proclamations. And Fife is going to read the names, and I'm going to come present the proclamations.
Hang on to that basket. There we go. Okay. Here, you're going to have to take these from me here. Okay. The first recipient is Joe Beeler. There we go. And next, we have Mr. Tom Chauncey. I don't know how this worked out that I get to read the names and she does all the work. That's a really good deal. And now we have Dr. Lawrence Walkup. Okay. And Mr. Ben Avery. And this last certificate in honor of Mark Wilmer, which will be received by Liz Sexton.
Thank you, Governor and Mrs. Symington, very much for being here this evening with us. So with that, let's start the video and single out the first of tonight's History Makers.
Many Arizonans will live their lives enjoying the exquisite landscape and array of wildlife our great state has to offer, and never know there's someone they should thank. If you cherish the magnificence of the Arizona outdoors, then you must love this man.
My name is Ben Avery. I was born over on the Blues, near Clifton, and I kind of grew up all over Arizona. My mother and dad divorced when I was still a baby, and my mother raised my sister and I back in the days when you had to make your living off the land. When I was 5 years old, there was an ad in Country Gentleman magazine. You sold so many prescriptions, they'd give you a .22 rifle. I think it was 12 subscriptions I had to sell. They sent me a little single-shot .22 Hamilton rifle. My mother took me into Cochise to get it, the post office, and I bought 2 boxes of shells, some shorts for 20 cents a box and some longs for 40 cents. And we started home. The idea was that I would learn to shoot and kill rabbits so we'd have more meat to eat. And on the way home, I killed a jackrabbit.
At 12 years old, Ben took on his first job.
I finally decided I wanted to better myself a little bit, and I went to work in the meat market as an apprentice meat cutter. But the newspaper is right across the street, and I got acquainted with the only reporter on the paper at that time, and used to run around with him, and he kind of got me interested in reporting. So I decided to give up meat cutting and become a newspaper man. And it was a real opportunity to started me on a career that I've followed all the rest of my life.
Coupled with his love for writing was an interest in the outdoors.
I covered all the government offices, and one of the fellows who really took a liking to me was Judge Clifford C. Ferris, the Gila County Superior Court. Judge Ferris was a great outdoorsman. He was born in Virginia and hunted. He kept hunting dogs, and he got me started hunting with him, hunting and fishing. And that really started me in a sideline career.
Avery soon took on the volunteer task of publishing a statewide magazine for the Arizona Game Protective Association in a successful bid for enactment of an Arizona Game and Fish Commission. After brief stints working as a ranch hand, packer, and miner during the Depression, Ben joined the Arizona Republic in 1937, assigned to the state capitol beat. One of his early stories made a quick impression on then Governor Hunt.
The reporters covering the governor's office would take a handout from the governor, and they never asked him any questions. They just take what he handed out to them, and that was the news out of the governor's office. So I didn't work that way. And one morning I came to work. There was some farmers from Yuma who had come down to see the governor because he had vetoed the appropriation for the inspection stations. And they were mad. When they got through seeing the governor, they were very unhappy, and they unloaded on me. And I wrote a story in the Republic. The next morning, the governor yelled to his secretary to throw me out of the office when I walked in.
In 1945, Ben began a column that developed into a strong editorial voice for a wide range of natural resource issues. He sponsored legislative reforms dealing with state parks, hunting and boating safety, and wildlife management.
I'm just really happy to see that we have been able to preserve wildlife and increase it in the face of all of the increased population that we have. I think it's the biggest tribute to the people of Arizona, and they've done this. I didn't do it. But I fought a few of the political battles to get it done.
Ben also led campaigns to protect Valley Mountain preserves.
If we hadn't acquired these mountains, we would have homes scattered over all of them. So we have preserved a part of the city that is really the skyline, the backdrop of the whole city. And I think it's something that future generations will really enjoy and appreciate the fact that we were able to do this in time.
In the 1960s, Ben led a crusade to construct a practice range for Arizona shooting enthusiasts. A few years later, the facility would be named in his honor. In 1974, Ben retired from the Republic, having covered every governor since statehood, all of whom respected his fairness and activism. And while most folks spend this time of their lives taking it easy, Ben took on a new adventure.
I ran my first marathon when I was 69. And then the next year, I ran it again when I was 70. And I got to 4th and 5th places, I think, in my age bracket.
Ben decided to save his legs for his true love, hiking. He spent his 80th birthday climbing up the peaks of Mount Humphrey with friends and family. And he can still be seen trekking through the mountains he once fought to save from the developers.
Well, the protection of Arizona's wildlife, the protection of Arizona's land, the development of our parks have really been a big part of my life. And it gives me a great sense of satisfaction that we have done as much as we have done in Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Ben Avery, Arizona Historymaker honoree.
Presenting Ben's Historymaker Award is Bill, that's 1-800-CALL-FOR-TICKETS, Shover.
May I first qualify, Ben, if you give me the chance, about those tickets. Murney, we're not going to the game, in case you want. He got our tickets. I am just pleased to be a part of this program tonight, and when Renee asked me if I would do it, I'll tell you, if someone else said they were going to do it, I would have killed them, because I want to do this award tonight for Ben. Ben and I have known each other for over 30 years. We've had a lot of fun together, a lot of campaigns together, and I have great admiration for him. I only wish that tonight Gene Pulliam could have been here, because he was so proud of this man. Gene's been away from us for 20 years, and I looked up some clips. And by the way, I went to our library to read about Ben. I think it was 3 pounds I found of clippings there about you, Ben. But there was one that said, from Gene Pulliam, it said, of all the people we've ever had at the Republic, he is the most loyal, the most dedicated, and my best friend. And that's a tribute from Gene Pulliam. Believe me. Ben, you've got many friends here tonight. Ben has contributed so much to this state, it'd be hard to enumerate beyond that film, which was wonderful. Ted, thank you for that contribution, too. And this is to our friend, Ben Avery, 1995 Arizona Historymaker. There he is, Ben Avery.
Thank you, Bill Shover. I didn't really accomplish anything. The people of Arizona did. And I was lucky enough to be in a position where I could point out some of the things that needed to be done. And there was plenty of people that got behind me and got them done. And it's the biggest honor of my life to be here tonight with all the old friends I have, including my hiking club, the Squaw Peak Scamps, and all of my old friends, including my old friend John Rhodes, who certainly did a lot for this state. If I've done anything at all for the state of Arizona, I hope that all of us will live to enjoy it and appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Now let's meet this evening's next Arizona History Maker.
Every important art movement has a pace setter, a person who led the way for others to follow. They garner the respect for their genre, take it to new heights. Arizona is the home of cowboy art's ultimate contemporary master. And although he is not a native Arizonan, it is here that he made his mark.
My name is Joe Beeler, and I was born Christmas Day in 1931. I grew up wanting to be a cowboy, and my father was a miner, and my grandfather was a miner, and of course I also grew up thinking that I might have to do that someday, but I always dreamed of being a cowboy and an artist, and you know, all my dreams have come true.
Joe's fascination with Western tradition was not restricted to the life of a cowboy. He was born with Cherokee blood, and his reflections of Native American life come from an intimate, first-hand perspective.
I went to powwows when I was very young, and I actually danced, and you know, a good part of my summers, a certain part of my life are spent going to, I probably went to a lot more Indian dances than I did Anglo dances at one time.
At the same time Joe was learning to ride and dance, he was also exhibiting a natural ability to draw.
As a small child, I could always draw. I always loved to draw, and I was encouraged to draw. And I was selling, you know, I sold my first painting when I was like 15 or 16 years old. But my art was always encouraged, and I was fortunate enough to go to school and pursue that.
Art studies were interrupted by Uncle Sam in 1953 as Joe found himself on his way to Korea as the conflict was grinding to an end. After his discharge, Joe met Sharon McPherson, and they were soon wed.
Sharon and I, on our honeymoon, went by the Gilcrease Museum, and I told Sharon, I said, this is what I would like to be someday. I showed her the art in there, and I said, that's what I want to do. And she said, you know, she was with me. She said, okay, we'll do it, and we'll do it together.
Sharon's love and encouragement were the final ingredients in the making of this artist. A one-man exhibition at the Gilcrease Museum, where he first dreamed of becoming a Western artist, soon followed, and Joe was on his way.
So the opportunity presented itself. We decided to move, and we loaded up our belongings in a little U-Haul trailer and a pickup truck, and we moved to Sedona. It's been a great inspiration, and then many of the good collectors were Arizonans. After moving here, some of the first people to start buying my work were Arizona people. Gosh, the old Walter Bimson, you know, the wonderful banker that started the Valley National Bank, he was wonderful to us and bought my work in the early days and loaned me money when I bought my first studio, and Thelma Kekeffer and my brother Eddie Bash, who has been such a great friend to us and a friend to Western art, to many artists.
Joe's influence on the direction and reputation of contemporary Western art grew as his own career began to flourish. In 1965, he became one of 4 founding members of an organization called the Cowboy Artists of America. Through the work of this society, the market for Western art continued to expand, and the movement went on to find critical acceptance throughout the United States and abroad. Today, Joe's sculptures and paintings are exhibited proudly in the world's most prominent museums and private collections, some many miles from the nearest cow country. His Sedona hacienda is nestled in an environment rich in inspiration for a cowboy and an artist.
We live here on 5 acres and have a nice home, and we've got our horses and our animals and everything here. But I did build a studio, and as I said before, I like to work in different mediums, so I built a studio where I could have a place to do my sculpture and painting and drawing all going at the same time. And so it's pretty much of a mess.
A tour of his studio demonstrates the maturity and seasoning of an artist who continues to strive for new levels of achievement.
I think that I'm learning all the time. I consider myself a student of life and of my art and my subject matter, and I've never considered myself any more than that. I think I'm learning all the time, but I'm just having fun. I really have fun at what I do, and it's really a privilege to be an artist, I think, and I've never taken that privilege lightly. And if you could say that you're a dreamer and you have had all your dreams to come true, why, and I can just about say that I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Lucky and proud that he has pointed the way for others. As proud as Arizona is to call him one of our own. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Arizona History Maker honoree, Mr. Joe Beeler.
You know, I was a little worried because Eddie, who's presenting this, is not sitting at the same table, that I wouldn't be able to spot him in the dark, but it wasn't all that hard. The only risk was I might have grabbed Jerry Murphy by mistake. Presenting the award is Arizona's chubby grocer, Eddie Basham.
Thank you, Grady. Well, I'm honored to be here this evening and to present this coveted award to you, Joe. I might say that I really didn't have the privilege of knowing you early on when you used to get on your old horse, get your trusty 22, ride out there and shoot squirrel and rabbit to put meat on the table for Sharon and the kids. No, I knew you when you drove up in your four-door Mercedes, had that gold inlaid Browning over and under, and went dove hunting. The truth of it is, Joe Beeler has been recording history. He senses it, he touches it, he feels it, he sees it, and then he communicates it, and he creates it. And it's an indelible legacy to all of us. Joe Beeler, congratulations for this award, for being an artist, a cowboy, a good citizen, a friend, and a brother. I love you.
You open it up?
Hey, what can I say? Hey, this guy here has kept a lot of artists from going hungry, and I happen to be one of them. He's a wonderful guy. I would like to thank everyone. I'd like to thank my family for being here. I'd like to thank the Historical League for seeing fit to choose me as to getting one of these wonderful awards. I'm an adopted son of Arizona. We love Arizona, and it's nice to be loved back. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for this award.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Now it's time to meet our next history maker.
Rags to riches, the American dream, overused terms, but words that truly represent this genuine Arizona pioneer.
My name is Tom Chauncey. My brother, a year older, he was 14, I was 13. We hopped a freight train and spent a week on the railroad coming and landed east of Phoenix. I remember saying to my brother and looking around, I said, I'm never going to leave this place.
An act for which the state of Arizona would someday be thankful. The brothers soon landed jobs in the center of 1920s Arizona political action at the Adams Hotel.
Senator Hayden said to me one time, he always sat at the bell bench with us. He said, Tom, what are you going to do? And I said, what do you mean what I'm going to do? And he said, what are you going to do for a living? You're not going to stay here and be a page boy the rest of your life. He said, you've worked real hard and you get along well. And the lobby of the Adams Hotel was as big as his farm. It was unbelievably large. He pointed over to the desk and he said, well, if you're a good boy and you work hard, someday you'll be behind that desk instead of in front of it, and you won't be running up and down the stairs. And that's about as far as you're going to go without an education.
After thinking about Senator Carl Hayden's good advice, Tom heeded this guidance and set out to find a profession.
So I walked, next morning I thought about it, and I walked down the street, which is 20-some thousand people in the whole city of Phoenix. And I walked into a jewelry store called Friedman's, and I said, I want a job. I want to learn the jewelry business. He said, why? And I said, I like the jewelry. I love jewelry. And I said, Senator Hayden. He said, Senator Hayden? I said, yeah, Senator Hayden. And he thought, you know, he's really giving me a con job now. He told me I should get a job and learn something. And he said, $10 a week. But I said, I don't like bellboys. They don't give any change. I said, well, I don't keep your change, and I don't want your change if I don't earn it.
Tom spent the next 20 years learning the business before he went out on his own. In the 1940s, he relocated his business into his old stomping grounds, the Adams Hotel. It was at the Adams where Tom would meet another influential person in his life.
Gene Autry came to town and stayed at the Adams Hotel. He lived there at the Adams, and his wife, Ina, we became very close friends, lived with us at the hotel, and we were together constantly. And Gene kept saying he was absolutely fascinated with broadcasting. And this is the 20s, the 30s, 40s. Anyway, he said, we've got to get in some broadcasting. And he said, you and me, and we'll get going. I said, I don't know nothing about broadcasting. I'm happy what I'm doing. He called me one day, he said, I bought us a radio station. I said, I'm not going to run that radio station. I don't know a damn thing about radio. He said, you're going to learn.
And he did learn. But Autry wasn't through building his broadcasting empire.
He called me one day and he said, we've got to get into television. It's going to be the thing. CBS wants us to get into television. They want an outlet. They want us to be that outlet. We've got to do something. And he was heading for overseas someplace. This was on a phone call from an airport someplace. And he said, take care of it. So here we go again.
And thus was the beginning of television broadcasting in Phoenix. KOOL, Cool TV, was born. But the television business wasn't an immediate success.
It was a disaster. We lost money like it went out of style. I went to the bank 5 times in 1 week. Terrible losses, $100,000 a month. I mean, Gene and I had built a station in Tucson at the same time. We weren't satisfied with losing enough down there. And we were losing $50,000 a month there and $100,000 here.
As Arizonans began buying television sets, business turned around.
The programming was just whatever you could get. A lot of it was live. But it wasn't very good. People would look at damn near anything, I guess, and they did.
One morning, a young visitor came to the Cool TV studios looking for a job, a day Tom recalls with fondness.
I was looking for him, and I finally looked over the desk like this. That was Wayne, this fat, chubby little guy. He says, I want a job. I said, job? How old are you? He said, I'm old enough. I want a job. I need a job. I need my mother, and I've got to feed my family, and I want a job. I'll do anything. And what do you do? He said, I sing. I said, well, sing. Well, he did. My God, I don't know if I got a girl or a boy here.
Years later, Wayne Newton would be discovered by Jackie Gleason at a luncheon hosted by Tom. It was this knack for knowing what was good that led to a number of broadcasting firsts. Tom hired Arizona's first female anchor, Mary Jo West. Cool was the first local station to accept Merv Griffin programming. If you've heard of Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, you know the importance of this endorsement. The only independent station in the nation with a documentary department which produced in-depth programs concerning Arizona history and issues. Tom always understood that with a license to broadcast, you had a responsibility to serve your community, a responsibility he didn't take lightly. But the 1980s were an era of takeover. Local affiliates began giving way to corporations, and television stations were in the hands of broadcasters with a different philosophy than Tom.
Those big companies, they don't give a damn about Phoenix or anybody else. They care about how many dollars they're going to put in their pocket. That's not broadcasting. You have using the people's license, the people's airways, and you're going into their homes, and you have a responsibility.
Today, Tom's love for ranching and Arabian horses takes top billing. Ventures he's also succeeded in. He's been courted by presidents, he pioneered broadcasting in Arizona, and played an important role in our state's growth and distinction. Not bad for a kid who rode the rails and arrived here penniless in the 1920s. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Arizona History Maker honoree, Mr. Tom Chauncey.
Good to see you. You recognize those people on there? I didn't recognize them.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Tom's award is Bob Davies.
Thank you, Grady. Really terrible to look up on the screen and see what one looked like some 40 years ago. However, it's been about almost 40 years since I've been able to call this man boss, mentor, and certainly friend. And in those early days, he was fooling around with this fledgling company in broadcasting, and not only did he make a financial success of it, but he did something that a lot of broadcasters don't do. He made a vehicle for public good, and he did so not only in this area, but in the state as well. In the early days of broadcasting, his very personal efforts earned him very quickly the respect of many of the people in the business, and particularly so with the CBS television people. I remember in the early days having said, and you will remember this, see if this sounds familiar to you. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. This is KOOL TV, Channel 10. You remember that? Yeah. He has been all of my life not a man who likes public adulation, and if he had his way and knew I was coming up here, he'd say, Davies, sit down and shut up. And so I will very quickly, but I want to tell you that many people could be standing here and doing this and would like to do so. I am the privileged one. For all of your work, on all of the people you've helped along the way, all of the good and positive groups you've lent your name and your money to, and all the many charities that have touched your generosity, on behalf of all of them, and indeed the Historical Society, I am delighted to be able to present to you your award for 1995 Arizona History Maker. It's inside. Thank you. I got the bottom. There you go. And this is for you.
Thank you, Bob. He should have stayed in Yuma.
I'm leaving right away.
You won't be back. I'm deeply grateful that I could be here tonight and say thank you to all of you. I just want to say the only missing thing for this evening is Mark Wilmer. I'm sure he's with us. We all loved him dearly, and we miss him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Let's meet the next Arizona history maker.
Every distinguished learning institution has a leader who guided it to greatness. In the second quarter of the century, a little campus in Flagstaff called Arizona State College was waiting to take its journey. Over 1,000 miles away in Missouri, a young man was being nurtured to lead the way.
J. Lawrence Walkup. I graduated from college in 1936. Then I said to my dad, I said, well, there's a lot more opportunities in the West for a person with my kind of education than it would be staying around Missouri. So you're going to have to tell me goodbye because I'm headed for Arizona or California. And so I took the first job.
In 1948, Lawrence came to Flagstaff as assistant professor of the college's only prominent program, the School of Education.
My first impression of Flagstaff, of course, the people were extremely friendly. The faculty were friendly, students were friendly, the townspeople were friendly. It was a great fact. But the physical structure was run down a lot, and it needed attention.
After the untimely death of ASC President Dr. Lacey Eastburn in 1957, Lawrence was appointed to succeed him. Walkup began building ASC into a major player by establishing a good relationship with Arizona state legislators.
I was aware of my handicap of being from an area where the population was scarce. So I would start off before I would ask them for what I wanted. I would mention the things they'd done for the school, and I would express my appreciation. And some of my friends would say, you know, when we left the station with you, the fellows had said, well, he's the first fellow that ever thanked me for this. Most of them just say, well, why didn't you give me more?
ASC began its evolution, becoming the fastest growing learning institution in 11 western states. Student enrollment increased from 600 to over 5,000, and in the early 1960s, ASC was given university status. Northern Arizona University was born. Lawrence continued the school's growth, creating colleges of business, engineering, health sciences, creative arts, and perhaps NAU's most notable, forestry.
Being right in the heart of the largest ponderosa pine forest in the world is quite an advantage. So we don't take second place to anybody.
And while many universities across the nation were unreceptive to the growing junior college movement of the 1960s, Lawrence assisted communities in creating schools.
The other thing that we did to help the junior college movement was to accept the credits without any question. In other words, we didn't make it difficult for a person to transfer from CUNY college to the university.
During Lawrence's tenure, NAU graduated a number of esteemed graduates, including former Arizona Governor Raul Castro. Perhaps Dr. Walkup's crowning achievement as an educator was maintaining good faculty-student relationships during the incredible growth of the school.
It was a friendly atmosphere, and so we were getting up there in the 10,000 numbers, and I thought, well, I'll build another campus. It'll take care of the students. The atmosphere, I can preserve the atmosphere. So this idea of rather than building skyscrapers and have a crowded condition, we started a new concept there with the South Campus,
The South Campus is home to one of Arizona's most striking architectural structures.
I used to use as my excuse for needing the dome was at the half, I would see Joe Roll slip away. And Joe was a dedicated NAU former athlete and so on. And when it got so cold out there that Joe couldn't stand it and had to go home, I thought that there were a lot of other people who were getting cold too, you see.
Today it stands tall as northern Arizona's most celebrated man-made landmark. After Lawrence's retirement in 1979, the facility was renamed the Walkup Sky Dome in honor of the man who built NAU into one of the most distinguished universities in the western United States. Upon his departure, NAU was over 12,000 students strong, and the university's value had increased from $8 million to $150 million. But Lawrence didn't do it all alone. Much of the NAU and Dr. Walkup achievements can be attributed to a former school teacher named Lucy.
She could, if she wanted to run for office, she's got the knack for bringing people around to a positive point of view. The story of Lawrence Walkup would be entirely different if he didn't have Lucy Walkup as a cohort there.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Arizona History Maker honoree, Dr. J. Lawrence Walkup.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Walkup's History Maker Award will be presented by a 1993 Arizona History Maker, Dwight Patterson.
Larry, it was a rather day when you came to Arizona in 1948, especially for the university, for this college, the State Teachers College of Flagstaff. After 8 years, you became the president. That was the finest growth that we had in any university in the country. We started out with about 1,000 students and got up about 12,500. Larry, you've been a great, great addition to northern Arizona.
I'd have to say at this moment that this is the most beautiful experience of my life. And I would like to also say that it's an exciting and amazing experience to think about the fact that my name will be added to those very carefully selected Arizona History Makers. And I haven't gotten used to the idea that you put me on that list. It's a great evening. Thank you all.
Thank you. Now let's meet this evening's final History Maker.
Water. It feeds, clothes, warms, and lights our way. A vital necessity to any community, especially for one born in desert country. Arizona's water faucet was opened up by this distinguished attorney. It wasn't a crusade Mark Wilmer started, but it was certainly one he rescued.
Yes, I was born in East Troy, Wisconsin. When I was in Marquette that I decided to become a lawyer. Then I went to law school at Georgetown University.
A few years after graduation, Mark paid a visit to an old law school chum who had located in Phoenix, and he never left.
I was a deputy county attorney, and there were some problems then with the politics and with the gamblers, because there's a lot of slot machines in the Phoenix area. Well, we arrested them and charged them, and we tried 3 or 4 of them, convicted 2 or 3 of them, and then the gamblers. The time came when we had convicted as many as we thought we could, and we had the thing pretty well cleaned up. I went back to private practice, and about that time I got a call from Frank Snell asking me to come see him. And I knew who Frank was. I knew he had a very good practice. So I went up and visited with him, and he told me they needed a trial lawyer and that he understood I could try some lawsuits. He said, I just think that you ought to understand that I don't envision any big law firm. I don't envision any political influence or like that. I said, well, Frank, it doesn't really make any difference to me because I have very much the same ideas.
This partnership, sealed with only a handshake, would last over 50 years. But for all their good intentions not to become a firm with political influence, in 1957, they were thrust into one of the biggest cases Arizona would ever face. A case in which the fate of Mark's legacy would be cast. The importance of the state of Arizona versus the state of California cannot be overstated. Lose, and Arizona would no longer have enough water to sustain its growth. For decades, the state had argued for its right to Colorado River water with little or no progress, until Mark got the call from Arizona Governor McFarland.
Said the bar had suggested that maybe I could take it over, and so we did. It was a bad mess, I'll tell you that. And I bet you I wasted 3 months trying to find, first of all, some authentic minutes, secondly, digging some meaning out of that compact and all the rest of it, and finally I came to the conclusion that it's just a lot of nonsense.
Mark was also known as somewhat of a sportsman, and he used some of his hunting techniques to discover a 1928 congressional act authorizing the construction of Hoover Dam that allocated 2.8 million acre-feet of Colorado River water to Arizona.
I recall that California was quite astounded when we passed that around, which we said that we sorry, but the case Arizona case was wrong.
But admitting Arizona's previous arguments were unsound and altering the state's long-running strategy could have proven treacherous.
We're in a hell of a spot. If you're wrong, and you've dumped Arizona's case, and in addition don't get any water, you might just well not go back to Arizona because...
Mark won the landmark case before the United States Supreme Court, and the Central Arizona Project was born. Mark's legacy of the flow of this water is hard to adequately measure. Today, many Arizonans don't think much when they turn on the tap or light up their home, but Mark knew, and he often visited the mighty river and other watering holes to enjoy one of his other passions, the great Arizona outdoors. To understand why Mark was such an Arizona advocate, you need look no further than to his own family, his loving wife Genevieve and their children. Mark went on to prevail in other notable cases and won acclamation for his legal ability and high standards of ethics and professionalism. And for over 5 decades, Mark Wilmer and Frank Snell's business alliance and brotherhood remained steadfast.
Well, you know, 50-some years, almost, with you that close to a guy, you just can't help but feel that he's pretty much, he's your brother. I felt that I was very fortunate.
For having known a man like Mark Wilmer, our great state has benefited. Heroes don't come around that often. We convene here this evening with a heavy heart. In 1994, we lost a great man whose achievements will never be forgotten.
Time it was, and what a time it was, time of innocence, a time of confidences. Long ago it must be, I have a photograph. Preserve your memories, they're all that's left you.
But Mark's spirit lives on in the men and women of the firm he and Frank Snell created, and in the members of the Wilmer family who carry on his name. And to them, we say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand in honor of Arizona history maker, Mr. Mark Wilmer.
Accepting the award on his father's behalf is Mark Wilmer, Jr., and presenting it is a 1993 Arizona history maker, one of three we have honored from the firm of Snell and Wilmer, Bud Jacobson.
Thank you, Grady. Your father, Bernie, was my mentor for 45 years. I'd like to say to the audience that all four of the Wilmer children are here tonight with their offspring, Liz Sexton, Jen Hendricks, Charlie Wilmer, and Bernie Wilmer. I saw them taking the family picture outside, and there had to be 25 people in that picture. Your father is missed tonight, not just by Tom Chauncey and Grady and me and the family, but by everyone in this room. Many, many of his close friends are here tonight. It is my very special honor to present to you and the family the Arizona History Makers Award for 1995 to your father. Here you go, Bernie.
Thank you. I wanted to say that my father was my best friend. I loved him very much. We had long conversations. He was a man who did not like the limelight, as all of you who knew him knew that that's the way he was. But when he was told about this History Makers Award, he was greatly honored. He was honored not so much for himself, but for his children. We sat through a lot of wonderful speeches, but we're here for my father because we loved him very much and we're very, very proud of him. Thank you very much.
Well, don't sit down. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
The Board of Directors of the Central Arizona Water Conservation District asked me to communicate to Secretary Babbitt our request that a part of the CAP be named after Mark Wilmer. The Secretary could not be here with us this evening, but I have a letter from him to read. Dear Mr. Gammage, it is with the greatest pleasure that I write this letter to tell you that I have granted the request of the Central Arizona Water Conservation District and have this day officially designated the Havasu Pumping Station the Mark Wilmer Pumping Station. To our honorees this evening, you have enriched our state with your contributions. You have illuminated our lives by your example. You have given us a good excuse for a party. We'll do this again in 2 years, and the museum will open by the Super Bowl. Thank you all, and good night.
The preceding program was made possible by financial support from the Arizona Heart Institute and Foundation.